Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mission Possible Podcast. I'm Joseph VanFonda. I'm the CEO of the Disabled Veterans National Foundation. And of course, I'm a USMC SgtMaj retired. I'm a wounded warrior. Today's discussion revolves around a power theme that I love. It's called Weed Your Mental Garden, which is one of the program platforms within Mission Possible program. I'm excited to introduce my co-host, Dr. Marty Rossman, an expert in mind, body, and spirit approaches. Welcome there, Marty.
Thank you, Joe. Good to be here as always.
Now I'd like to introduce a special guest. This is Master Sergeant Emanuel Simmons. Master Sergeant, can I call you Manny?
Yes, you can.
Master Sergeant is a retired USMC Master Sergeant, more than 27 years. So I'm going to share a little bit of his background. So he served in the Marine Corps active duty for 27 years. He deployed to Beirut in Lebanon back in May of 1983, survived October 23rd, 1983, the terrorist bombing in Beirut, Lebanon. That was something else, and it lives with us. And we'll talk more about that, Manny. Retired from the Marine Corps in 2008. He had to do some extensive surgeries and so forth following his military career. He has a wonderful boxing career. He's been boxing all his life, not only as a civilian, but as an active duty Marine as well. He began boxing at the age of 13. He fought at Madison Square Garden a few times. Post-retirement, he was a junior ROTC instructor at the Carvers Bay High School in Georgetown, South Carolina. Hoorah. He was pursuing, he's always continuing education, so he's pursuing a master's in management and leadership, and he is focusing on boxing, 10 rounds of fitness, and it's affiliated with Rocksteady Boxing Program. And he's also going to be introducing a new program for the community of Jacksonville, North Carolina, which is called a Ring of Resiliency. Welcome there, Master Sergeant Manny. I'm telling you, I wanted to get you on last month, and we had some issues with aligning timing and so forth, but welcome to Mission Possible.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me.
Master Sergeant, I'm also thanking you for being here. I checked you out on, of course, on YouTube and Google, and I'm very impressed with you and the things that you've done. And I know that Joe's told me about you. You're serving as a mentor. Looks to me like you're using boxing as a platform for training and developing both young men and also in the service of veterans. So today, our topic is, we are calling it Weeding Your Mental Garden. It's one of the techniques we offer in the Mission Possible program. And it's basically kind of stepping back and, if your mind was a garden, have you pulled any weeds lately? And how do you recognize the weeds versus the vegetables and the flowers? And, are you watering the weeds, or are you getting them out of your garden? And you, as a person who's been through some very challenging, serious, to me, I'm sure, quite frightening and situations, both in the military and out, we might talk about the technique in some detail later on. That's not what's important to me now. I'm just wondering, I know that you're teaching a lot of physical fitness. I know that there's a lot of mind game in boxing, that it's as much a chess game as it is a physical game. And I'm just wondering about how you think about that topic and what kind of mental hygiene have you used yourself, and do you teach to your students in order to keep them focused and sharp and focused on the goal?
Well, thank you, Marty. Well, for me, I started out at 13 years old, as Joe said, and I was taught by a coach that led me to believe that boxing was a way of life. And the things that I was getting in trouble with in New York, he helped me understand that learning the different punches and combinations and mastering it is how life happens. You don't just jump into something fast and learn it and think you got it for the rest of your life. You have to keep on, as you say, watering it, and it will get better. And that's what I did. So I took that philosophy with me everywhere I went. You know, I just had to grow into whatever I was working on at that particular time, and kept feeding it, kept watching it grow. And then it got better, it got easier. And then I felt that I was mastering it. And so I just kept on doing the same thing time after time again.
Go ahead, Joe.
So I know that you were boxing at 13, being introduced to boxing, and that was your boys club, girls club. You know what I'm talking about. That was your resource. That was your place to go for discipline, mindfulness, control from the environment that you grew up in. I grew up in upstate New York, you know, in Albany, and wasn't a very good city. And, you know, we had the boys club, girls club that I would actually go to every evening, and that was my outlet. Either that, or you're on the streets and you're hanging around with the wrong individuals, and you become, you know, that duck that you walk with. So you got these skills, you're learning discipline, you're more structured as a young teen, young adult, and then you decide to join the Marine Corps. So let's start there.
Well, I decided to join the Marine Corps because, well, it was 3 of us. It was 4 of us total that was going into the military. And 4 of my friends after high school, we decided to go into the military and give that a shot. So 3 of them was going in, and I was still on a contract, a professional boxing contract, and I couldn't go until later. So I tried to finish out my contract. So they went in, they all went into the Army. I said I was going to go later, and I decided to go in. When I did go in, I selected the Marine Corps because everybody said that was the hardest group. So I always wanted to challenge myself. So I went into the Marine Corps. And
funny story, and I, you know, of course, I travel a lot. I travel a lot as a first sergeant, sergeant major. You know, just travel the country, East Coast, West Coast, different bases and so forth. And you know, there's always a pub or a restaurant at the airport. And I'm just, this is a sidebar. And you know, I'm in uniform, let it be the Charlies or whatever, and I'm sitting down, I'll grab myself a light beer or something to eat or whatever while I'm waiting for my, you know, 3-hour flight. And there's always someone that would, you know, the uniform attracts. You know, the Marine Corps has a wonderful uniform. Beautiful. They're all beautiful, but the Marine Corps is just a little bit more shinier. So that shininess attracts, you know, individuals. And next year I got an individual that was in the Army or joined the Army, was in the Navy or the Air Force. And we sit down and you know, the uniform attracts, and we just start talking, and we're all cut from the same cloth and start talking about life challenges and so forth. But the end of the conversation, or somewhere within the conversation, and I'm making fun, is that service member sitting next to me, whatever, says, you know, I always wanted to join the Marine Corps, but they just wouldn't take me. So I joined the Army or the Air Force. It always ends that way, Manny. And I know you had many of those conversations as well. And that just puts us somewhat more so on the pedestal. Not that our branch of service is better than the other branches, but that's who we are, you know, and that's how we hold ourselves. And that's the shine that the Marine Corps gives us, you know. So here you are, and I make fun of other branches of service, and I love them all. We support them all, but numerous conversations where, you know, I wanted to join the Marine Corps, but I couldn't. So I just wanted to throw that in there because I'm proud of being a Marine retired sergeant major. I'm proud. I can't change who I am. I'm always going to be that sergeant major, but I'm still Joe, you know, but I'm always going to have those leadership traits and principles, fundamentals of leadership, the moral compass that it gives you, you know, the stamina, the resiliency, the problem solving skills and so forth, you know. And so now that I'm out, I have this energy and I have this new direction of where I want to go. And DVNF has actually helped me find who Joe is, and we're serving our veterans and so forth. So here you are, young Marine going into what MOS, and tell us about your workup to go into Lebanon. And maybe you can talk to us about that first week of Lebanon that you encountered.
Well, the workup was in May. We was going, and here we are. We as excited to do the things that we was been training to do. So we finally get there. We get there, and so things are totally unexpected. You know, we had a lot of crowds in the street. We had to make it to the BLT, and so that was a challenge. But once we got there, everything seemed to slow down and get a little normal. So we started bonding together. We started meshing and doing our thing as Marines. We had duty. We had, patrols. So we did that. We fell into that. And that's what we was training to do. And so that went on for 6 months. And the 6th month was October 23rd. That was the day it actually happened. The bombing, the terrorist bombing happened.
And what happened to you? You're in a barracks at the time when this happened, correct? Were you sleeping?
Yes.
So this happened at nighttime, early morning hours?
Early in the morning.
Can you talk about that moment that when it first happened, what woke you up? And I know that you had horrific injuries, and you spent some time in the hospital, following the bombing, but where was your mind at? How did you absorb this? How did you hang on? What helped you? What did you fight through for that moment when you woke up to a bombing?
Well, when I woke up, I was buried under the building, not aware that the entire building was down. I thought the plywood that we had covering the spaces of the windows came down. So I laid there, couldn't move other than my right arm. And I was looking for my left arm because I thought it was off. So as I laid there, I was thinking to myself, what happened? Trying to make myself laugh to keep myself calm. And so I just heard a lot of machinery, a lot of yelling, and I just said, God, please don't let me die here. So in that moment, I started hearing somebody digging for me. So they was digging, somebody was yelling down, Bud, you okay? And I was yelling, get me out of here. So they started digging. They needed a machine to move a boulder. They took the boulder away, and I started feeling a draft on my neck. And that's when they started digging and pulling me up and took me over to another building to do a life assessment. They to see how much damage I was, or see if I was needed to get medevac to the hospital. And I was in a condition where they can save me. They took me, they flew me to the ship, the Iwo Jima. After the Iwo Jima, they flew me to Landstuhl Memorial Hospital. And from that point, and when I woke up from there, I found myself paralyzed and laying there thinking that I was going to be dependent on somebody to take care of me for the rest of my life scared me. Here I am, a former professional boxer and a Marine. And now at 23 years old, I'm thinking somebody had to take care of me for the rest of my life. So we were going in, they were coming in, giving me some therapy, scraping my feet, moving my fingers, pricking me with some sharp object, no feeling. So that went on for a couple days. And then I started getting feeling back. And then I started moving a little bit. So I started bench pressing the pillow. I asked one of the Navy, the Army personnel to bring me a towel with a disc weight on it so I could start curling on the side of my bed. I wanted to try to get my momentum back and my strength back. And so I started working from there, working from my bed.
So your mind was set on problem solve. I'm in this situation. Problem solve. I need to move forward. I need to move. Problem solve. I can't settle for a new normal. I have to dig deep on my resiliency, and work through it all. So from that moment, by the way, how long did it take them to dig you out?
I have no idea how long it took, but from the time that I woke up to the time that I was aware I was buried, I don't know what time lapse that was. But from the time that I was conscious to the time that they started digging for me, it had to be about 10 minutes.
10 minutes. But you're in and out of consciousness, so it felt like 10 minutes, probably much longer. So you had a neck injury as well, because you must have fractured your C7 in order to be paralyzed, right?
Well, in the very beginning, yes.
Yeah.
It was a temporary paralysis, thank God. And
Going through this, what kept you going though? Was it your fellow Marines? Was it the environment you're in? I know I know you have some deep resiliency that was built into you before joining the military. Um, but you know, those first few hours, you're still in shock, probably trying to figure things out, and your body's contract under heavy brick mortar boards and so forth. Can you go back to that moment and you just for that flash? And I know it's painful, but what was actually going through your mind at that moment? Staying calm, trying to understand where you're at, and focusing on moving forward. I mean, where were you at that?
staying calm was helping me to relax. I didn't feel any pain. Both of my eardrums were bust due to the blast.
Wow.
And every time I look at something, and it could be because of my boxing history. I look at everything as one round at a time.
Right.
So I take everything and build it from there. Okay, I'm conscious. I can feel everything that's going on. I am aware of what's going on. So now I have to get out of here. That's round two.
Right.
They got me out of here. So now we're moving up, and so now I'm in the hospital, and so
Now it's round three.
and I was free, so it was a matter of building from there.
Now, so to get you to your, the way we move our service members out of a combat area is routine, priority, and urgent. So you fell in that urgent category, they life vac you out, nine line you, get you to the ship. They do triage on you and so forth, because I know your face is ripped open, you have a punctured lung, and
Punctured lung, face ripped open, shrapnel wounds, broken shoulder. And I didn't feel any pain at all.
But emotionally, how was your emotional status? Are you trying to stay in control of your emotions?
Yes.
Headstrong?
I just had to continue to believe in the Marines that I served with, the guys that I did the training with. I always felt that they're going to be there for me. And then when he took me on the ship, we had one Marine that was there watching prisoners. And he came and saw me laying there. And I asked him, are all the guys okay? I said, you need to look and see if the other guys are okay. And so he told me he was going to do that. And from that point on, it was just shuffling me off to get me to a plane and to get me to Germany.
Right. So Germany's round four. That's where they look at what they did to you on the ship, refurbish you, go back in, do some more surgeries, spending time at the Naval Hospital or the Army Hospital, and then of course you medevac back to Camp Lejeune eventually.
Correct.
Well, here you are going through this, your fourth round of boxing here with life challenges is what you're doing.
Yes.
So we lost a lot of Marines that day.
Yes, we did.
I know you lost some friends. So here you are. I mean, going through this entrapment of bombing, and you're at round four and you're going into round five. When do you start reasoning with yourself that, yeah, everything's gonna be fine, I'm gonna push through, because here you are, your first round, second round, third round, you're working resiliency, you get to the main Army hospital, and you're starting to feel your legs, starting to feel your hands a little bit. But where's the mind at right now? I mean, where's your mind at? That's the thing though, because that's the most important part of our body next to our heart. And I want to know where your mind is, because as you know, next month is October.
Yes.
So ironically, how I aligned you for September for Memorial that's coming up. That's part of your life.
41 years. 41 years. And, I was going back and forth when I was in a hospital bed and can barely move. But when I started moving, I wanted to see what my face looked like, because every time somebody came by my bed, they would never, they would always well up. They would look at my face and I didn't know what it looked like. So one night I crawled out of my bed, crawled into the bathroom and pulled myself up on a sink just to look in the mirror. Because I wanted to see what I looked like. And when I looked up in the mirror, I couldn't even recognize myself. All my pigmentation was burnt off. You know, I had bandages wrapped around my head, on my cheek. And then when I got back to the bed, the nurses found out I was gone. They came into the bathroom, brought me into the back to the bed, and I didn't want to move forward after that.
Right.
I thought it was over. You know, I imagine myself going back to my neighborhood and looking the way I did. It was hard to handle. But then one of the doctors came in and said, if you think you look bad now, you should have seen what I had to work with. And he brought me a picture that I kept with me my entire career in the Marine Corps in my left breast pocket. And it was my face, my pigmentation.
Do you have that picture in your office right now?
No, I do not. And I had it laminated so I can keep it in my left breast pocket. So when they decided to let me stay in the Marine Corps, I said, they can work me long, but they can't work me hard. It's never going to get as worse as it did. So I just kept on pushing forward.
So this is October of 1983. You get blown up.
Correct.
We lost many Marines, your peers, friends, but you served 27 years.
Yes.
So in order to stay in the Marine Corps for 27 years and get blown up, they put you back together pretty good in order for you to stay on service, because as you know, we have tough standards in the Marine Corps, physical fitness and all that, and of course we don't mess around. So if you're broken, they'll separate you, and they'll cycle another one in your place. You know how that goes, or product processing, sadly, at some point. But esprit de corps is called the spirit of a unit. The Marine Corps is a machine. It's the people in it that love you. It's the people in it that protects our country and serves our country and creates that history. That machine is just a template, and it can be adjusted and moved and so forth. The reason why I say that is because you're a machine too, because that resiliency, taught you before you joined the Marine Corps how to solve problems, but through boxing and through mindfulness and things of that nature, which helped you through these first 5-6 rounds of boxing as you got blown up in the Beirut bombing and so forth. So here you are, you finally looked at yourself, and you're like, wow, hideous look away kind of thing. And so what was your next step after that? How did you work through that?
Well, it was just a matter of wanting to get back and want to stay a Marine.
Right.
And part of me wanted payback. I knew 1/8 was going back there the following year.
I was with 1/8 1st Battalion, 8th Marines. That's the Beirut Battalion. You know that.
That's right. And I wanted to go back. I wanted to go back to honor my friends that didn't make it back. We sat around and had long talks about what we were going to do in our retirement days. And it never happened that way. So I felt I had to push myself, train myself, get stronger so I can do it for them.
Marty?
You mentioned, Manny, that when you went to the bathroom, looked in the mirror, it sounded like that was a time when, at least temporarily, you kind of lost heart. I'm sure you were feeling, that it's all over. And I think Joe is trying to get at this too, and somebody's asking a question too. I'm not even quite sure how to ask that. We're kind of interested in what you can say about your mental process, because, you sound like, since your early boxing training and with the teacher that you had, he sounds like you taught boxing as a martial art, really, with focus and purpose. And this is a model for life. And so it sounds like you built a lot of resiliency in you. But it sounds like that was a moment of vulnerability, or a time of vulnerability, when you might have lost it there mentally for a little while. And I'm curious about how long that lasted, and how, was there a turning point? Was there a place where you decided to get it back together, and was there a particular stimulus for that? Does that make sense to you?
Yes. And it was the photograph that the surgeon gave me of my face before he did the surgery. So when I saw that, I was like, you're right. I was bad off. So it was all a matter of giving it time to heal.
Mm-hmm.
And that healing process, I had to believe in it, because I still wanted to be a Marine. I still
Mm-hmm.
wanted to stay in the Marine Corps. And I
So,
knew
go ahead.
they was gonna process me out,
Mm-hmm.
because they didn't think I'll be able to do what the Marine Corps require you to do.
Mhm.
So after I got out of the hospital and got into training, and this was training while I was on convalescent leave, my goal was to stay in the Marine Corps. So I had to get stronger. I had to be able to run a PFT. I had to be able to do pull-ups. I had to be able to qualify and do exactly what I was able to do before the bombing happened. I did not want to give them a reason to put me out.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
How long did it take you to get back to that place?
2 years.
Wow.
2 years.
Now, back in 1983, nobody was talking about mindfulness, not unless you were in the 60s smoking marijuana from Vietnam, right? Nobody had that mindset of, let's find out, why are we holding on to things? Why am I holding on to something I can't control? And so you utilizing your characteristics of boxing and mindfulness strategy techniques, and using those characteristics and getting back to the gym and bettering yourself, seeking self-improvement, because you wanted to stay in the military, you want to fulfill your contract, you have a long-term vision. Back then, we didn't have the recognition of mindfulness, or even talking about it. If you look at what's happening right now in the media, schools and the education and even the military is actually just catching on. We need mental health mindfulness practitioners. Seriously, it's on the government jobs board, looking for doctors on mindfulness. Because they understand that our mind is a muscle. Our mind, we need to control that. We go to the gym, man, that. We go to the gym, we work on triceps, biceps, or whatever. But do we ever sit and think about what's happening? Sort of a little nugget right here, and we in the military, we call it a grape. You know that, right? That's we have nicknames, acronyms for everything. Grape. And we want to keep that good, because if the grape is solid and strong, and we have a full understanding on why some of these characteristics work the way they do, whatever, that can help us work through those life challenges and so forth. So I wanted something, Manny, for DVNF, for veterans, first responders, where they can actually go home, self-taught, journal, and so forth. They got Marty's beautiful mug right there, talking lecture about mindfulness and skills and techniques that work us through life challenges that can help eliminate or manage anxiety, PTSD, and so forth. So I say that is because I know I got PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. I have it.
Yes.
I know that you have it, and you and I talked about it briefly, whatever. I got my life challenges, right? And the PTSD is that thorn in your side that reminds you of what transpired in the past, but can it control you moving forward? It can take some time away from your day or maybe a week, So I know you're dealing with PTSD, and I think, and I'm just reading you and keeping busy the way you are, creating programs for the community, using boxing and mentorship and life skills. I think that right there is why you're still alive. That's just my thought.
Well, one of the surgeons, when they were working on me, they told me, he said, if I wasn't in the physical condition I was in before the bombing, I wouldn't have been able to make it.
Mm.
Being a boxer, you have to put your body through tremendous fitness, and that's from top to bottom. And that was my first year in the Marine Corps. So I just left professional boxing and professional boxing training to go into the Marine Corps. So the physical part of boot camp was nothing for me.
Mm.
And so my coach constantly drove him, and you never quit. You always try to find another way to get to your opponent. And
Absolutely.
that stayed with me throughout the whole time. Even when it was the third round in the last 2 minutes, you can still win if you don't give up.
Absolutely. And then Manny, then you became a Marine drill instructor. What the hell were you thinking?
Well, it helped me
It was a
learn.
beautiful thing, brother. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I'd love that when I was a sergeant just like you. And
From
I'll
the
tell you what,
time I graduated boot camp, I wanted to be a drill instructor.
I'll tell you what, well, you remember Sergeant Major Featherson and all them
Yes,
knuckleheads,
out there when I was there.
Yep. Featherson was actually Second Marine Battalion Sergeant Major at the time. I was a young sergeant, so I know we probably stopped the same ground. Of course, we have, and probably know the same individuals, all that. But so here you are in 4 months of boot camp as a Marine drill instructor. What do you think about that? What you think about that?
It was
Because you got to have some resiliency there for that school just alone. Is the reason why I say that, Marty, because this is the hardest school out of all our branches of services. That's just my thought.
well, when I thought about going to the drill field, it was mainly because I wanted the Marine Corps to trust me and believe in me again. Because even though they knew my history of Beirut, they always wondered would I break down, would I snap. And so I always wanted to challenge myself just to prove to them that I was just as solid as anybody else.
That's a hell of a challenge. I mean, if
It was a rough school too.
you thought you were in shape when you got there.
Yes.
You thought you had. I'm talking, Marty. I'm 26'9". I'm talking. You're memorizing a manual this big.
Yes.
And you're a professional at all weapons, small weapons, and so forth. Martial arts. You're the guy. You're the expert. Techniques of military instruction. So it's not only physical. You are the Marine Corps as a drill instructor. As one drill instructor, you are a Marine Corps. You are the Marine Corps because you are that profession that teaches everything. And so here you are as a new drill instructor, and you're in your squad bay, starting port side, whatever. You got 84 recruits. They're all coming from all different walks of life. The reason why I tell you this, man, because I'm an Albany, New York kind of guy. I grew up in the city. I grew up very poor, and there's a lot of racism in that terms of whatever the case is. But when I was a drill instructor, I stepped out as a senior. If you're from New York, take a step forward. You're from Philadelphia, you take a step forward. I hit all my big cities. What do you think I did with them? I brought them to the pit. I wanted to break them down. I wanted to let them know that, guess what? I don't care where you're from. I'm going to zeroize you. We're all equal. You're all knuckleheads. And then, of course, I took the country boys to the pit as well. But the point I'm trying to make is everybody was even. And that's what I loved about the Marine Corps. Is that I can specifically talk about the Marine Corps. I did not have, probably more so, because you came in earlier than I, didn't have any issues in terms of racism at the time or big segregation. We came from big segregation in the Marine Corps as well as other branches of service. And there's a lot of history in Jacksonville, North Carolina in terms of that. You know? And I know you can talk a lot about that, and I have a lot of history in terms of that. But the reason why I say this is because it does help with mindfulness, knowing that, you know, you're not judged by the color of the creed, how fat, skinny, tall, short you are, whatever. You are a Marine, and you're going to accomplish what you're told to accomplish, and you do your best of your ability because the guy next to you is not going to let you fail. Right? That was mindset. What was your experience in terms of that? Because I know you did 27 years. And, you know, as you grew up in the rank, you know, from staff sergeant to gunnery sergeant, you find yourself more as mentorship, troop welfare, as the expert still, then first sergeant. I know you were a master sergeant, I was a first sergeant, then I became sergeant major, whatever. But you found yourself as not only creating the recipe or managing the recipe of leadership traits and principles, but you found yourself as that mentorship as you climbed up and all that. But what's your thought on your experience as a Marine, and what was your takeaway in terms of your 27 years?
Well,
Because when I first met you, Manny, you're very approachable, and we just talked as if we were, you know, cut from the same cloth, and we fought in the same foxhole. So I was just wondering, you know, where's your mind now from being that 13-year-old young boy to be a man that served your country for 27 years, been through Beirut bombing, all right? You have a wonderful 10 rounds of fitness gym and community programs for veterans, first responders, family members, and so forth. But what was your takeaway from all that? And did that help you with your resiliency?
Yes. Well, one of the things was when people first saw me in uniform, they saw the Purple Heart. You know, if you have your Charlies on,
Right.
and me coming back as a Lance Corporal, they seen a Lance Corporal with a Purple Heart on his chest. A lot of questions come up.
Yeah, people
You know,
were
this was
saluting you.
right after the Vietnam era.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and I was too young to be in the Vietnam era at the time. So that struck a lot of talk and concern about the senior staff NCOs, and they wanted to know more of how did I get it. And so they always leaned to me for answers, not the staff NCOs, but the Marines, because of the experience that I had. And I was also older than a lot of the young Marines, that because I came in at 22 years old. So I was a lot older than the other corporals and lance corporals. And then when they see me with, you know, a chest full of ribbons, they wanted to listen. They wanted to hear. So they wanted to see what did I do. And at the time, I was pushing myself to get better. And so they always felt they was going to hang with me. So they wanted to do better also. So that group got bigger. And I had more followers or more subordinates that I had to work with. So my staff NCOs would always choose me as the leader based on the appearance of how well I performed and how well I looked in uniform and how hard I pushed myself. So that helped me a lot getting through. And there was no job in the Marine Corps that I did not want to master when they gave it to me, because I stayed out of my MOS, my military occupational specialty, for 20 years. So once I became a drill instructor, I became a OCS instructor, Officer Candidate School instructor.
Company gunnies.
It was
exactly.
monitor, you know, so it was always about teaching for me, which helped me. You know, that helped me as long as I was teaching a Marine or helping a military person, you know, that was my motivation. I felt that I was giving back. And so I did that.
And would you like to talk about your program now? You're carrying that same intent outside of the service?
Yes.
In the community?
When I retired, I chose to become a junior RTC instructor at a high school. And so it was always about teaching for me. And then after that, I wanted to open up a school for at-risk boys, guys that grew up just like me. in the city, that was a knucklehead. So, but it was harder to get a school, so I chose to do a boxing gym. And so I had the boxing gym, and upstairs is a classroom. So that's where we mentor the Marines at, and downstairs, that's where we train them at, or the boxers.
So
How
the
old
new,
are they when they come in?
Well, I like the age to be at least 8 for kids, 8 to 12, and then 13 and up. We have a lot of kids 13 years old, as big as me. So
absolutely.
size has a lot to do with it.
So Manny he built this program called, Ring of Resiliency, which is a boxing platform cycled by weeks, which has built-in mental minds, mindfulness techniques, as well as mentorship and understanding yourself, and also control. And that's what this brain is. We can we control it? What is Weed Your Mental Garden, Marty? What is Weed Your Mental Gardening, and how can you
Yeah.
use that
Let me talk a
platform?
little bit about it. There's also one of our attendees said has to do with that, Joe. It says, it was great to hear you both openly share that you have PTSD. Thank you for that. Makes me feel better about seeing it not as a negative, but as a positive when you can deal with it like you both did. You mentioned weeding your mental garden. Can you give a specific example of how I can do this, Dr. Rossman? So in the Mission Possible program, it's basically a technique where it came out of a program that I designed about worry, about helping people learn how to worry more efficiently and not waste their energy worrying. And basically, that technique is about separating the things you can do something about from the things you can't do something about. And the technique is simply taking some time, sitting down and writing down all the things that you're worrying about. You could modify it in the case of PTSD to write down all the recurring thoughts and the thoughts that keep coming back like a weed, that you don't want there, but it comes of its own volition, and they're hard to kill and they're hard to get rid of. So you write them all down, and then we go through a process of going through that list and putting them into 3 columns. And the 3 columns are something I can do something about, something I can't do anything about, even if I want to, and I'm not sure. And many of you will recognize that as coming out of the kind of the serenity prayer that anybody who's a 12-stepper will recognize. You notice that. And then in the column of things you could do something about, there's particular ways to deal with that. Will you do something about it? What could you do? In the column that you can't do something about, then there's basically a technique that I call positive worry imagery, which is taking that. So it's something like you really want to do something about that, but there's nothing physical that you can do. You can't take an action. The one action you can do is you can turn it around, and it's sort of like an upside down prayer in a way. It's like, instead of worrying about, Aunt Betty in the hospital who's sick and you're hoping she doesn't die, and thinking she's going to die, she's going to die, she's going to die, you take it and you put instead what you would like to see out of it. And so you're essentially praying, whether you pray to something bigger than you, or you have a particular religion, or you're just putting it out there in the universe. Instead of putting out that she's going to die, you put out that if it's up to you, she's going to live. So you turn it around. I was thinking that in terms of PTSD, and especially memories where there's regrets attached to it, and where you may have lost friends and colleagues, where you keep thinking about people that are no longer with us. And this, even out of the military, can be people that you're grieving for still, and you can't let go. You don't want to just cut them out of your garden like you would a weed and throw it away. But what you want to do instead, if you can, I think, is identify it and own it and say, I miss that guy. I might have even put that guy, Joe shared a couple of situations. I might have even put that guy in a situation where he got killed. Or I might have missed doing something that could have saved a life there. And instead of trying to run away from it or negate it and cut it out of your brain, kind of owning it and owning the feelings that go with it and memorializing it in some way, sanctifying it in some way, do something that honors the thoughts and honors the feelings, and yet takes back a bit of control, not the control that I'm never going to think about this again, but the thought that something that has other thoughts attached other than grief or guilt or shame. What do you think of that? Does that make any sense to you as guys who have experienced things like that?
Is that question to me?
Yeah, you or Joe. I don't have.
Till pretty much put that soccer ball in his hand,
Mhm.
and I kind of like look at that even before he mentioned that, but I look at that as a symbol. It's like, okay, let me look at it from a different angle, and try to reason with it. So I find myself reasoning to get me through that day. And I think weeding your mental garden helps, balloon breathing, relaxing a little bit, or maybe just being by myself. When another individual's around me and they know something's up or whatever, it just kind of like scrapes at that scab and just makes me more aggressive to, more aggressive toward the PTSD is actually feeding off of that, if that makes sense. It's kind of weird. I want to be left alone. I want to decompress a little bit. I want to get my mind straight, and I want to figure out why did it come up? What was the trigger? And I can't figure that out. But I say that is because, I have bad days, I have good days, right? Sometimes I have a bad week, right? How do you work through your bad day or bad week? Because I know you have them as well there, Manny.
Well, I look at the situation, if it has to deal with a younger person, I will not bring out my day, and I would talk to that individual and try to lighten up the load and try to do something humorous, try to get them to do something, and it was always teaching. Now, there's days that I just have to be by myself. And I do a lot of reading. So for me, it's reading this book by Dr. Miles Monroe. And it's an excellent book. I had it for years, and it helped me understand the things that I needed to do, the things that were in me already,
Right.
that I wasn't aware of, that I needed to express and show everybody else, because we were given gifts. And who are we to take that gift away from somebody else and not do anything about it at all? So I try to use those gifts that might be positive for somebody else. So I do it all the time, at home. If something breaks, I process it, and if it's not that bad, if it can be fixed, I'll work on it. If not, I discard it and move on. I do something else. I don't try to hold on to anything long that's negative. So it's just a process for me. Because PTSD, I learned that a lot of negative things can happen if you just let your mind just free into that situation. And I try not to. One of the things I feel is all my strengths is being around people that I can teach. And as long as there's somebody around me, there's always something I can teach them. There's something I can learn from them. And I'll just keep on asking questions.
That's fantastic. Manny, I want to thank you for being with us, and we just got a couple minutes, and I want to give Joe the closing lines, but it just impresses me with both of you, and actually everybody that Joe has invited to be on this podcast series, that you're all people of service. And you know, thank you for your service, not only in the military, but after the military. You've found ways to continue to be people of service, and you give and you give and you give. And it's a very inspiring thing. And I do think there's a lesson there for the people that are floundering and, you know, feeling alone and so on. If there was some way to find somebody else that you could do something for, I think it's one of the most powerful things that there is in helping a human being feel like a human being. And you're both great models, and just been an honor to be with you.
I appreciate it, Doc. Hey, Manny, before we close out here, do you think that you'll be able to utilize Mission Possible platform personally and maybe professionally, and maybe have your athletes and your veterans, first responders, and family members use it? As you know, it's free.
Yes. Yes,
It's
sir.
a resource, right? We don't turn away resources, as you know, Marines don't, whatever.
Yes,
So
most
first,
definitely.
Manny, I want to thank you for being here. I know that you're starting a new program, a Ring of Resiliency. And with that said, I believe in you as a Marine. I believe in you as an individual. I believe in your resiliency and your steadfast and your can-do attitude. And the Disabled Veterans National Foundation wants to award 10 rounds of fitness, $10,000, so you can put towards the Ring of Resiliency equipment and so forth to get that program going. And you can count on this, brother. And I'll tell you this, you know, I'm going to stop by and I'm going to see you. And if I can help cultivate and bring relationship to you, I will. But once you get it up going, it's moving along. I'm going to come visit you next year, and I'm hoping to have another check of $10,000 for you as well, to keep that program going for our veterans, first responders, our community, and so forth. Because I believe our young children, our young adults, our young Marines, our young service members, our veterans, I think we all need mindfulness. We need that integrity of the mind. We need that moral compass. We need that discipline within. And I think we've lost that. And I really think that 10 rounds of fitness, and, you know, Mass Sergeant, Simmons, Manny, I know that you're the man that can do it for the community of Jacksonville, North Carolina. So, you know, I believe in all life challenges can be managed, and I think we can do it with Mission Possible. You know, my co-host, Dr. Marty Rossman, thank you for being a part of DVNF, the Disabled Veterans National Foundation. And Manny, I'm going to be coming to see you soon, brother. And
Yes, looking forward to seeing you.
congratulations on your $10,000 award, and thank you for sharing your story of resiliency. You have a wonderful, wonderful afternoon.
Thank you for
Marty
having me.
Rossman, always a
Thank you
pleasure,
for
my
the
friend.
donation. The gym could definitely use it. It's going to do great things inside our organization of 10 rounds of fitness.
Wonderful.
And I will make sure your name and Mission Possible will be on our next jersey, our next shirts, our next uniforms. So, hey, thank you again. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Semper Fidelis, brother. Dr. Marty Rossman, you take care, brother.
Been an honor, Joe. Thanks.
Thank you, Marty.
Bye, everyone.